Well, spring is finally here. The birds are chirping, the sun is shining most days anyway, and us Canadians, even the less outdoorsy types like myself, get to come out and enjoy our freedoms. Oh yeah, gotta love breathing in that fresh air. And you know what? I have a right to. I have a right to as a Canadian citizen. I have the right to life, liberty, and security. And you know what? That means I get to enjoy the outdoors, I get to wear the clothes that I want, and I get to decide when I want to be alone. I get to decide when I want to be around other people. And this is great. This is what being in a free society is all about. Except not everyone in Canada gets that right. And for good reason. If you've been convicted of a criminal offense, you aren't really able to function as an adult in a law-abiding society. You don't. You've surrendered that right. Sure, you've got the fundamental rights to life and some forms of liberty, I guess, but you don't really have the right to decide what clothes you wear. You certainly don't have the right to decide what types of food you eat, and mobility rights, well, don't even bother. But some people in the liberal media missed the memo. Certainly some people behind bars did. We had in the Chronicle Herald a piece which was this really horrendously tragic sob story from an inmate behind bars in Newfoundland. He said that he didn't like the policy that was implemented by the Newfoundland Correctional Service to make inmates wear, get this, orange jumpsuits. I bet you were probably surprised that they weren't already. Well, in most of the country, including Ontario and other provinces as well, inmates are required to wear the standard issue orange jumpsuit. It helps people who work in the jail know who's living there and who's working there, and it also helps prevent things like contraband from being smuggled inside the sole of a shoe, for example. But Kevin Roberts, a convicted robber in Newfoundland, not a guy who stole a pack of gum, a convicted robber, he doesn't like it. He said it injures his dignity, makes him feel less proud of himself. He said it hurts him in his attempt to rehabilitate himself. Well, this is part of the problem. Jail or prison, they serve two purposes. One is rehabilitation. We want to equip people to better deal with the world when they're released, if they ever get to see a release date. But the other side of it is that they're there to be punished. They're there because they've proven they cannot live by the laws of a free society. Laws saying you can't hurt other people. Laws saying you can't steal from other people. You can't kill other people. These are pretty reasonable restrictions, I think, on our freedom. Anything that compromises someone else's freedom. So why are people shedding tears over inmates not getting to wear their designer jeans and designer clothes? This is actually what he said he wanted to fight for. The right to wear his $50 jeans. I wonder if he stole them too. I don't know. I'm not judging, I'm just a bit curious. These are not real human rights plights. What people behind bars are suffering from, I'm not sure that not being able to wear clothing other than an orange jumpsuit is really something that we should care too much about. Unfortunately, people are. People are just lapping this up. Same as last year in Saskatchewan when inmates were fighting for the right to have better food. They didn't like eating peanut butter and jelly all the time. They didn't like having, standard cafeteria luncheon food. The kind a lot of seniors are eating, anyone in a hospital is eating. And good for Brad Wall, Saskatchewan Premier, at the time, one of the best premiers, if not the best premier in Canada, who stood up against it and said there was a fundamental thing that anyone could do if they didn't like what they were eating behind bars. And that was, quite simply, don't end up in jail. Don't end up in prison. That seems like a pretty reasonable concession to me. Here's what Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall said at the time last year. He said, if you really don't like the prison food, there's one way to avoid it, and that's don't go to prison. I couldn't agree with Brad Wall anymore. These prisoners, these inmates are saying, well, what can we do? How can we fight? How can we get our rights and freedoms? Well, there's a very easy way to do that. Stop robbing people. Stop killing people. Stop raping people, stop assaulting people, stop breaking the law, and you get to decide whatever food you want to eat, whatever clothes you want to wear, and you can get outside and enjoy the fresh air whenever you darn well want to. But this is this hug-a-thug mentality we've heard so much about. We have to care for these people, nurture them. I agree, everyone deserves a little bit of love and nurturing, but it's a little bit too late when you're behind bars. So yes, I think as a country, we should help people, we should equip them, we should get them to get outside those jails and eventually become responsible adults. But what better way to do that than by showing them a lifestyle that they would never want to end up back in? Peanut butter jelly sandwiches and orange jumpsuits are apparently the worst thing these people have ever endured in their lives before. But the complaining never stops. Let's look at another much more high-profile case. And that's that of former spy, basically, Bradley Manning, now known as Chelsea Manning. So I guess the espionage expert formerly known as Bradley, or the artist formerly known as Bradley Manning. I'm not sure about the protocol these days. Chelsea Manning now has a gig as a Guardian columnist and is complaining about being in solitary confinement. There was a column in The Guardian written by Manning talking about the plight of being forced to be alone. Now, keep in mind, we also hear from inmates ample complaints about when they don't like being around other people. So I don't know, what do they prefer? Overcrowding, being alone? I can't keep up with it. Something tells me they might just like complaining. But this is what Manning wrote. Solitary confinement is no-touch torture and must be abolished. Manning was on suicide watch. I'm not sure that we can really blame the military, blame the government, blame anyone for wanting to make sure they were keeping an eye on Bradley Manning at the time, not wanting to hurt himself at the time. Manning writes that for 17 hours a day, they were guarded in a room where they could be supervised, not allowed to lay down, not allowed to lean back on the cell wall, not allowed to exercise. Again, we're back to this question of who cares? I can't really shed a tear for what Manning did because, let's face it, there's a way to end up behind bars. To go back to the good advice from Premier Brad Wall, which is don't be a spy. This is not difficult advice, but somehow people have an incredibly difficult time understanding that anyone has a tool in their arsenal to enjoy freedoms, which is don't take other people's. For the Rebel.media, I'm Andrew Lawton.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.